Drug dealers Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe had been executed in a Range Rover at the end of this farm track in Rettendon, Essex.
The three dead men were known criminals: Patrick Tate, Craig Rolfe and Anthony Tucker. All three had convictions from drug dealing to armed robbery.
It lasted almost 5 months and cost an estimated £1.5 million. Protection for Supergrass Darren Nichols, the chief prosecution witness, and his family was thought to have cost more than £300,000. The jury were out for 4.5 days, and despite their unanimous verdict, 3 women jurors broke down and wept as the foreman told the judge Steele and Worms were guilty. As Justice Hidden noted, the case rested entirely on Darren Nichols. I hardly need stress the importance of Nichols' evidence. So much hinges on what he said. Nichols, 5'6", podgy and truculent, did not come across well in court. Nonetheless, he stuck to his story. On the day of the murders, December the 6th, he said he'd met Steele and Worms, who he'd known for a couple of years, around 5 p.m. He said he was told they were going to meet Tate and the others regarding a drug deal. The rendezvous was the Halfway House pub near Rettendon, Essex. He said they drove there in convoy. Steele in his Toyota Hilux, Worms and Nichols in the latter's VW Passat. Nichols told the court that the Passat was kept out of sight, while the Range Rover, carrying Tate, Tucker and Rolfe, swept into the car park. Steele left the Hilux and joined Tate in the back of the Range Rover, which then drove away. Nichols said that Worms, now dressed in a boiler suit and Wellingtons, directed him to the bottom of Workhouse Lane, the isolated scene of the murders. Worms got out and said he would phone when he needed to be picked up. At 7 p.m, said Nichols, he got a call to come and get us. It was only when he saw the 2 men's blood-splattered surgical gloves, Nichols explained, that he realised what had happened. His shock and terror were so great, he said, that he very nearly crashed the car. The prosecution said that after being dropped off by Darren Nichols, Worms hid in bushes and waited for the Range Rover to arrive. Tate, Tucker and Rolfe, guided by Steele, thought they were on a reconnaissance trip for a future cocaine deal and unsuspectedly drove down Workhouse Lane. The end of the lane is barred by a locked gate, but the prosecution surmised that Steele had told the others he had a key. He got out, ostensibly to open the gate. As prearranged, Worms came out of hiding, passed a gun to Steele, and the slaughter commenced. Both Steele and Worms had alibis. Steele produced petrol and supermarket visa receipts from 5 p.m. on December the 6th to show that he was in Colchester at the time, and could not have been driving the Hilux, as it takes diesel. His former sister-in-law, postmistress Phyllis Stanbrook, testified that she had met Steele at his home at 7:30 that evening, but under cross-examination, she said she wasn't certain of the exact date. Steele's appearance in the witness box had not helped his case. Against the advice of his legal team, he began by regaling the jury with a long list of his previous convictions, mostly connected with drug importation. As he believed he was innocent, he thought he would be straight. He did not need to tell the jury of his murky past, but he would do it as a token of honesty. It completely backfired. Jack Worms agrees he spent the evening of December the 6th collecting Darren Nichols' car, the same VW Passat. The vehicle had broken down and Worms, a mechanic, told Nichols he would collect the car and take it for repair. Worms had driven with a trailer to the Wheatsheaf public house where the Passat had been left, loaded up, and called Nichols to tell him he was on his way back to the yard. Ian Bristow of the Forensic Engineers Association told the court that Worms could have not made the call asking to be collected from Workhouse Lane as alleged, because his mobile signal would not work on either of the 2 aerials covering the crime scene. The defence also pointed to the state of the Passat, which had no heater, a noisy exhaust, and to all intents a clutch that was unusable. Hardly an ideal getaway car for a triple murder. Moreover, the Passat apparently passed up and down Workhouse Lane without leaving any tyre marks or oil leaks. Intensive forensic tests on the car found no traces of blood, glass, gun residue, or indeed any link with the murder scene. Although Worms allegedly lay in wait in the bushes by the gate, and then, according to Nichols, took over the shooting because Steele's gun had jammed, had managed to guide invisibly, leaving no trace. An impressive feat for a man 6'2" and weighing almost 19 stone. A single footprint was found by the offside back door, exactly where the killer would have stood. It is from a size 10 training shoe. Jack Worms is a size 11, and according to Darren Nichols was wearing wellies. So what, according to Nichols, was the murder motive? Underworld sources have repeatedly alleged that in autumn 1995, Nichols bought £120,000 worth of cannabis from an Amsterdam dealer to investors in England, including Pat Tate, who had a £70,000 stake in the deal. The cannabis was found to be counterfeit. A furious Tate let it known that Nichols' life was in danger. Eventually, Mickey Steele, a friend of both Nichols and Tate, interceded. Steele was paid £2,000 by Tate to go with Nichols back to Amsterdam and secure a refund. This was achieved and the money handed over to Pat Tate. True to form, Tate kept the entire £120,000 and told the other investors Nichols had failed to pay up. Giving evidence on oath, Nichols simply swapped roles with Mickey Steele. He told the court it was Steele who set up the Duff cannabis deal, and Steele whose life was threatened by Pat Tate. Nichols' own credit card records proved he had gone to Amsterdam in November 1995. Nichols told the court he'd gone to chaperone Steele and secure the refund. Nichols agreed that Tate, instead of taking the £70,000 he was owed, had kept the entire £120,000. He alleged Tate had told the remaining investors that Steele had kept their money and ripped them off. By way of revenge, said Nichols, Tate vowed he would bring Steele before the defrauded investors and make him beg on his knees for mercy. Then he would kill Steele in front of them. Tate's girlfriend, Sarah Saunders, was supposed to inform Steele of Tate's lurid intentions. Nichols told the court he thought Steele and Sarah Saunders were having an affair. All the underworld sources regard this account pure fantasy. Saunders has strongly denied her part in the story and always insisted Steele was just a friend. Under cross-examination, Nichols admitted to being an informer for a police officer referred to as A, who was himself facing criminal charges. Curiously, Nichols said he would have done anything to get Steele and Worms arrested, yet neither man knew Nichols had any previous ill feeling towards them. He also admitted he knew Steele very well and had the means to make up a plausible story about him and his colleagues. When asked by David Letterman QC if he ever thought about what was honest and dishonest, his cheerful reply was, "Not particularly. I don't think you can say I am," he answered, before hasting to add that, "I'm telling the truth now." Darren Nichols gave the court a chilling description of the night of the murders. He spoke of his terror, his desire to get away, and never to see Steele and Worms again. "So Mr. Steele would hardly be on your Christmas card list?" asked Mr. Parkins. "No," said Nichols. "Can you explain then," asked Mr. Parkins, "why you sent his family a card for Christmas 1995, just after a fortnight after the murders?" 2 days after Christmas, Nichols had gone to Steele's house. He brought his little girls to the house of the triple murderer to watch the rabbits playing in the garden. He also continued doing odd jobs and electrical work for Steele for several months after the murders. Yet more bizarre was the treatment Nichols had while on remand. His cell was furnished with a multi-gym and colour TV, table, chairs and clothes cabinet. He also benefited from a takeaway meal service. "It is right," said Mr. Letterman, "that one day you would have Kentucky Fried Chicken, the next day taco chips." Nichols agreed. "Even a hot chocolate before you went to bed at night," Mr. Letterman continued. "You were giving the VIP treatment," Nichols giggled. "Yeah, I suppose so," he replied. But perhaps the greatest problem with Nichols' evidence is the question of authenticity. Police transcripts of his statement show numerous instances where Nichols appears to be prompted or led. Occasionally on the tapes of his interviews, it appears to be reading. In fact, it was revealed in court that the same officers who interviewed Nichols had spent more than 30 hours in his cell talking with him off tape. One interview lasted 7 hours and 43 minutes. The police described these interludes as comfort visits. In court, even Nichols' own solicitor, Lee Craddock, admitted he was surprised at the number of hours police spent talking to Nichols off tape, and agreed this was an undesirable procedure. Nichols' evidence, however problematic, secured the convictions. On January the 20th, 1998, Justice Hidden sentenced Worms and Steele to life, with a recommendation they would serve a minimum of 15 years. Darren Nichols was sprinted away with his wife and children and given a new identity. "Of all the Supergrasses in the system, I am the tops," he said. Darren Nichols was arrested in May 1996 while in possession of 10 kilos of cannabis resin with a street value of £25,000. 4 months earlier, Essex police had questioned another man about the Essex executions and had been told a very different story.